The story of Balaam's ass. The people of Israel camped in the plains of Moab, just across the Jordan River from Jericho. Now, Moab was a king who ruled there, and when he saw the people of Israel, he became very afraid and said, "There are so many of them, I will not be able to drive them out with my army." So Moab sent a message to a man named Balaam. Balaam was famous throughout the land for his blessings and his curses. Whoever he blessed would receive the benefits of that blessing, and whomever he cursed would receive the full destruction of that curse. So Moab sent a message to Balaam, saying, "We will pay you money, Balaam, if you will come curse the Israelites and drive them out of my land and destroy them." And Moab's messengers delivered this message to Balaam. Balaam told God the message that Moab had sent, but God replied to Balaam, "You shall not go with them. You shall not curse these people, for they are blessed." So Balaam went to Moab's men and said, "I cannot come." Moab's men entreated him, but Balaam refused. But after they had left later that night, God said to Balaam, "If the men of Moab ask you again, rise and go with them, but do only what I tell you to do." Sure enough, the men of Moab asked Balaam one more time. This time, Balaam agreed and set off on his donkey with the messengers of Moab. But as Balaam traveled along the road, riding his ass, suddenly an angel of the Lord stood in front of him with a sword drawn in his hand. Balaam did not see the angel. Balaam's ass, however, did see the angel and turned aside to avoid the angel. Balaam became angry and struck the donkey. Again, the donkey refused to go, and Balaam struck him again. Finally, the donkey sat down and refused to carry Balaam. Balaam struck the donkey once more, but God allowed the donkey to speak. And the ass said, "What have I done to you, that you have struck me these 3 times?" Balaam was surprised, but answered back to his ass, "You have made fun of me. If I had a sword, I would kill you." Suddenly, Balaam looked up and saw the angel of the Lord with a drawn sword in his hand, and Balaam fell to the ground and bowed down to the angel. The angel of the Lord thundered to Balaam, saying, "Why have you struck your ass these 3 times? Behold, I stand here to oppose you, because I have seen that you have determined to disobey God. Your donkey saw me and refused to go any further. If she had not turned aside, I would have slain you." Then Balaam replied, "I have sinned, and I did not know that you stood against me. I will go back if you would like." But the angel said, "Go with the men of Moab, but do not determine to disobey God again." So Balaam went on with the princes of Moab. When Balaam finally reached the king of Moab, the king and all the princes of Moab said, "Now it is time to curse Israel." Balaam went with them up the mountain and said, Build for me 7 altars, and provide to me 7 bulls and 7 rams." The men of Moab did as Balaam had asked. Then Balaam offered sacrifice. As he began to sacrifice, God put the words of blessing in Balaam's mouth, and instead of cursing the Israelites, Balaam spoke a blessing, saying, "The king of Moab has brought me here to curse Jacob, to denounce Israel. How can I curse who God has not cursed? How can I denounce whom God has not denounced? Who can count the dust of Jacob, or number a 1/4 part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my end be like his." Then the king of Moab said to Balaam, "What have you done? You have blessed my enemies when I told you to curse them." And Balaam answered, "I have only spoken the words that God has put into my mouth." The king of Moab was confused, so he took Balaam to another mountain and said, "Try to curse them from here." Balaam once again opened his mouth, but again blessed Israel, saying, "The Lord their God is with them, and the shout of a king is among them. God brings them out of Egypt. They have, as it were, the horns of a wild ox. There is no enchantment against them. And now it shall be said of them, What has God wrought? Behold, a people. As a lioness it rises up, and as a lion it lifts itself. It does not lie down till it devours the prey, and drinks the blood of the slain." Again the king of Moab was confused, saying, "Stop talking, stop blessing them." He brought Balaam to yet another mountain, and said, "Try cursing them here. Perhaps at this mountain you will be able to curse them." But once again Balaam spoke the words that God put in his mouth, and blessed Israel, a great and beautiful blessing. Then the king of Moab was angry, and said to Balaam, "I called you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have blessed them 3 times. Go away from here." But once more Balaam opened his mouth, and spoke God's word, prophesying that the people of God would rise forth and crush the people of Moab, and take their land, and enter and live in the promised land. Then Balaam went back home.